Hey, good Wednesday afternoon. It's the 19th of January, and I just noticed that I've got a very bizarre little visual effect happening over on the corner of my screen. So I'm actually going to go see if I can brighten that thing up and save the effect, but who knows? Maybe I won't. Um it is the 19th of January. I'm back. Some of you were expecting to see Kim and me. But the unfortunate news is that Kim just got exposed to a little too much of craziness while we've been um, out on our road trip. And as a result, she is watching from bed. And a little later on, I'm going to be cooking for her. So, for those of you who want to be sympathetic to her, don't worry. She's going to be perfectly fine. And she's going to be just moments away from having a yummy dinner. And so I'm coming to you live from Charlottesville, and it is great to be here. And today's presentation is going to be just a fun little short. It's going to be short because after all, I have to go cook for Kim. It's going to be a short presentation intended to actually share with all of you something that I've been sharing quite often, but most recently I got to share at the Reawaken tour with Clay Clark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple documents that are going to be really helpful for you to have a look at if you haven't seen them already. And some of you who have been kind enough to be watching the shows that I've done from the road have said, Dave, it'd be really great if we could actually see the document in greater clarity so that we could actually talk about this whole Rand Paul thing, because there are a host of people who've been obviously very concerned with what I've said about Rand Paul not delivering the knockout evidence when he is working with Anthony Fauci. So I thought what I would do in this particular show is spend a very, very, very brief moment with each and every one of you to read through the document that I showed on the screen at the Phoenix Reawaken Tour event. But many of you who watched the show and many of you who actually were there watching that presentation said, man, it would be great to be able to see this in detail. So that's what's going to happen today. I'm going to share with you the document that no one seems to be able to find, even though it seems to be entirely findable, and why we haven't been able to have people find it. I am still somewhat mystified, but let's go in and jump into this document. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you in very, very, very quick review what in fact is going on when we are being told that somehow or another we cannot seem to get clarity around the fact that Anthony Fauci has repeatedly stated that NIAID had never done any gain of function research. And as you know, I get irritated when people in positions of power make statements that are self-evidently false. And so what I want to do is I literally want to show you the letter that was sent to Ms. Sherry Settle, Director, Proposal Management, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Office of Sponsored Research, Administrative Office Building, Suite 2200, Airport Drive, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. For any of those not familiar with this document, you'll see up in the upper right-hand corner that, in fact, this particular document was, as it indicates, sent to UNC Chapel Hill on the 21st of October, 2014, and it was sent from the National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Now, for the record, that is NIAID. That is Anthony Fauci's own lab. That is the document that, in fact, was sent from Anthony Fauci's lab to the lab at UNC Chapel Hill. And if we jump down here, we're going to look at a grant number, AI 107-810-02. That is the grant that is referenced, and it goes on to say, NIAID has determined that the above referenced grant may include gain-of-function research that is subject to the recently announced U.S. funding pause. Issued October 17th, 2014. The specific The following specific aims appear to involve research covered under the pause. Now, let's just pause for a second because it's interesting to kind of unpack exactly what's going on in this. What you see here, and hopefully you're seeing this on a screen large enough. If you're looking on a handheld, that's okay. Open it up on a computer, take a screenshot, and you're able, anytime you want, to have a full-size screen of this particular image. And I'm going to go ahead and, for this particular segment, block myself out and have it nothing but the text so that you can get the best document possible. What you see is the proposed project title, Project 1, Role of Uncharacterized Genes in Highly Pathogenic Human Coronavirus Infection. Ralph Barrett, project leader. Specific aim of the grant. Number 2, novel functions in virus replication in vitro. What that means is that they're looking for ways in which they can identify ways that this coronavirus can be manipulated in a lab setting. That's what in vitro means. That means in an experimental environment. And then specific aim number 3, novel functions in the virus pathogenesis in vivo. Now that word means that we have to now be seeing this thing play out in a living system. Hey, people, still here. Sorry about that. When I went to full screen, I happened to lose the entirety of the screen. So I'm back. Once again, or I'm going to jump back into that full screen view. Maybe I'll leave one screen open. How about that? I'll leave one screen open so that way I don't do the same mistake again. Let me just share this screen again, and we're going to hop back in here. The point is that we need to be able to see that the language inside of the grant very specifically says that we have a, here we go, specific aims of the grant. And now we're going to jump back into where I was before I mistakenly closed the wrong screen. What you see is specific aim 2, novel functions of the virus in vitro, and then specific aim 3, novel functions in pathogenesis in vivo. Specifically, people, what that means is that we were actually being asked to look at how this particular virus, this coronavirus model, is actually being manipulated in a living system. That's what the in vivo section is. Now, remember that what you have here is a document that unambiguously states that the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, was told by NIAID that not just they were engaged in gain-of-function research, but they were specifically engaged in gain-of-function research subject to the moratorium. And that means, for those of you who are out there, that means that what Anthony Fauci has said when he is being interrogated by Rand Paul and others, it is in fact evidence in this letter that what Anthony Fauci has said is false. This is not a close call. This is the document that Rand Paul has in his possession. This is the document Rand Paul refuses to use when he is cross-examining Anthony Fauci. And this mysteriously is a document that has the additional problematic element of the last paragraph of page 1, which I've made reference to many times. And let's just go into that last paragraph of page 1, just because it's so important for us to read what the last paragraph actually says. It says, as your grant is currently funded, this pause is voluntary. Now, ask yourself a question, and this is an interesting question. When there is a moratorium, most of us would interpret the word moratorium to mean that there's actually something that says that there's a thing that's been going on and that thing has been put on a pause or a stop. That's what a moratorium would mean. But what this letter goes on to say is that NIAID is giving UNC Chapel Hill a pass. In other words, that since this is already going on, and let's look at the next sentence, because this is the next sentence which actually flies directly in the face of every single thing that Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci have ever said. And let's be really clear. Organizations conducting gain-of-function research supported by the NIH have an opportunity to transition the applicable research to research that is not covered under the funding pause, halt the applicable gain of function research until the outcome of deliberative process is known, or continue to conduct the applicable gain of function research until the end of the current active budget period. Now, people, this is frustrating to me, and it's frustrating to me because I have been sitting here time and time again stating that we have a problem. And the problem is that we have elected officials who have stated on repeated instances that somehow or another we're letting people get away with NIH and NIAID saying that they were not doing gain of function research. But in this letter, they're not only stating that the UNC Chapel Hill program was in fact gain of function on coronavirus. So let's start with that, the self-evident nature of that statement. But let's go to that last paragraph and say that NIH is specifically saying that they are funding gain of function research, that the research is covered under the funding pause. But, and look at, you can't interpret that second half of the last paragraph. Halt the applicable gain of function research until the outcome of the deliberative process is known, or continue to conduct the applicable gain of function research until the end of the current active budget period. Now, what makes that last phrase so problematic? What makes that problematic is that the grants that were in fact the subject matter grants to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill were repeating funded center grants. And what that means is that this is kind of the revolving door. This is the gravy train of the NIH. These are the grants that are allowed to be essentially renewed without competition. In fact, many of Ralph Barrick's grants are non-competitive awards, including ones that he got from DARPA, despite the fact that the UNC Chapel Hill official response and Ralph Barrick's official response, which is in fact stated on numerous occasions that he allegedly never received funding, despite the fact that if you type Ralph Barrick and CV, look for his curriculum vitae, what you'll find is that he makes reference to a whole host of grants for which he is in fact a named beneficiary, despite the fact that he has stated on numerous occasions that he has not received any money from DARPA. Now, once again, the tragedy is his own documents show that he has. The named references in the DARPA documents say that he is a beneficiary. And despite all of that, they, UNC Chapel Hill and Ralph Barrick, continue to lie and say that he has never received funding from DARPA. That's just objectively not true. UNC Chapel Hill has those records. Ralph Barrick puts it on his own CV. His own papers make reference to the grants that he has gotten from DARPA. And all of this information is unambiguously clear that not only has Anthony Fauci clearly misrepresented the facts to Rand Paul and to the Senate committee, he has lied in public, but worse still, what we have is a situation where this clearly says that Francis Collins lied as well, that others have lied, because this letter is the smoking gun. This letter very clearly makes abundantly clear that this was in fact gain of function research. Now, there's a punchline to all of this, because unfortunately for all of us, the fact of this research being kind of a slightly problematic piece of evidence showing that Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins have lied. The most egregious problem is that if we look at this particular grant and then we actually ask the question, okay, well, maybe they did pause it, maybe they did do something, maybe there was a subjective call, and maybe they decided, okay, hey, maybe we're not going to go ahead and carry this research forward. The problem is that the very grant referenced inside of the gain of function moratorium, the very grant that was referenced that was gain of function, the very grant that was the thing that NIAID and NIH said was gain of function, that very grant is the grant that funded this paper. SARS-like Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1 CoV poised for human emergence. People, slow down and make sure you're listening to me. The grant that NIAID said was subject to the moratorium in 2014, the October letter I just showed you, that particular grant is the grant that specifically funded the chimeric alteration of the Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1, stating that it was, quote, poised for human emergence. It is the same funding source. And if we look at that particular grant, people, we go all the way down to the bottom of the grant, what we find is that we know that UNC Chapel Hill knew that this grant was subject to the gain-of-function moratorium. This is not a close call. This is not Dave making a statement. This is, in fact, a very, very, very clear piece of data in their own document. So we go down here and we look at this. And once again, this is not me trying to drive home, some sort of anecdotal interesting thing. What we know is that this says the reported studies were initiated after the UNC Chapel Hill Institution Biosafety Committee approved the experimental protocol titled Generating Infectious Clones of Bat SARS-like CoVs. So now let's get this really clear. Generating infectious clones. That means that they were actually seeking and building infectious copies of or infectious alterations of the Wuhan Institute of Virology virus. These studies were initiated before the U.S. government deliberative process research funding pause on selected gain-of-function research involving influenza, MERS, and SARS. And the current paper has been reviewed by the funding agency. So this is evidence that UNC Chapel Hill knew it was violating the funding moratorium. They went ahead and did the infectious clone generation of the Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1. They did the research. They then sent the research to the entirety of the NIH and NIAID, and worse still, they actually knew that it was subject to the gain-of-function deliberative process platform. That's what exactly this thing says. So this is not a close call. This is not a thing where we're sitting there going, oh, I wonder, Dave, you may be stringing these things together. I'm not. This is a direct chain of custody. This is an explicit piece of evidence that takes us from the moratorium of October 17, 2014, to the continued NIAID and NIH funded research in 2014 and 2015. And it takes us right up until the realization that this was absolutely subject to the gain-of-function moratorium as evidenced by the federal government's own document, their own document. Now, what's the point of all this? Why do I do this? And by the way, tons of you are out there going, there's not enough people watching this. There's not enough this. There's not enough that. Listen, people, our job here is really simple. Our job is to make it abundantly clear that we're doing everything we can to make sure that this particular set of information gets into the record. It is on your watch, like each and every one of you. It is on your watch to make sure this information gets shared, make sure that it gets posted on your Rumbles and your BitChutes, make sure it gets posted wherever it can. My job is to be the guy who just puts this in front of you. It's your job to make sure other people get it and share it and send it out, because we have the evidence that very clearly states that there is, in fact, not just a close call here. This is Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1. This is reproductive chimeric replication clones, which are specifically amplified for infectivity. This is very clearly the case. All of this information is dead in front of you. All of this information could not be more clear. And it is incumbent on each and every one of you to share this as far and wide as possible. Now, there is going to be, in the next little while, some new information going up on a new website. I'm working together with a great group of team in Utah. We're working on actively beginning a series of prosecutions. There is a website that has just come up right now. I'll show it to you. You'll see it for the very first time here. It is a website that is sponsored by a number of us who are actually actively caring about making sure that the public has access to information. And over the period of the next several days, we're going to be putting a whole bunch of new information up. This will be stuff that, I'll ask James to make sure we replicate this with Activate Humanity. I know Kim and I will try to make sure that this is going to be something that we can share on a number of other platforms, including the fullyliveacademy.com. We'll probably get it up on davidmartin.world. But prosecutenow.com. Prosecutenow.com is going to be a platform where we not only put together information specifically about prosecutions across every state, but inside of prosecutenow.com, we're going to have a bunch of resources that are going to be available, like the evidence that I just shared with you. Our goal is to make sure that at any point in time, every single one of you has the ability to download actionable items that go from everything for the draft indictments that we have for the special prosecutor questions, everything that we're doing, so that there is no chance that anyone can say, well, I didn't have the ability to do, I didn't have the ability to see, I didn't have the ability to share. So prosecutenow.com is a site that we're putting up right now. I know that Brian and Stan and John have been working their butts off to try to get it ready. Go on there and sign up as things become available. That is going to be a great point for resources. One of the coolest things about that site is we're going to have a map of the United States, and this is the design piece. We're going to have a map of the United States, and in every state, you're going to be able to download documents specific to actions that you can take in your state. And those actions will be able to include things like how to deal with people who are losing jobs, how to deal with the public health edicts from despots in public health authorities. All of those kinds of information will be at a single location. You're going to be able to go online. You're going to be able to grab information off of there. And so prosecutenow.com is where you're going to find a bunch of those resources. The fact of the matter is, people, what's the importance of a conversation like this? Well, the importance is really, 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 really simple. We have been advised for a very long time that there is an allegation that there is a public health effort that is being served. And we know that there have been times when we are asked to accept the possibility or the certainty that the individuals who are architecting this thing are lying, and they're lying in public. They often say it's a noble lie. They're doing it for our best interest. They're doing it because they want to make sure that we are all protected from ourselves. But the fact of the matter is, Rand Paul, and man, somebody out there has got to have access to a way to get in touch with this guy. There's no question that he has been misled. There's no question that he has abused the theater of his interactions with Anthony Fauci to raise money. There's no question that other senators have been doing the same thing. But this is an opportunity for all of us to sit back and say, hey, we have the evidence, we have the documents, and this video serves as a perfect explanation of the fact that we have all of the evidence from beginning to end that says NIAID knows that they were doing gain-of-function research. NIH, and let's just put it up one more time so that we can have a very, very clear reminder that this is not a close call. This is, in fact, a dead to rights. This thing is their own words. We know without question that this states that organizations are conducting gain-of-function research supported by the NIH. There is no way to construe that. There's no way to manipulate that. There is no way to do anything other than to say that that is the evidence that shows what I've been saying all along. This thing was manufactured. It was manipulated so that we would accept a universal medical countermeasure. That is the reason why we have shut down the country, and that's the reason why we've shut down the world. Go back and read 2011 to 2020 strategic plan. You will see that this was actually architected back in 2011, published in 2013, simulated in 2018, prepped and planned in 2019, and we, the people, have been had by people who, in fact, are explicitly and overtly lying. And the politicians who fail to hold those individuals accountable are, in fact, not serving the public interest. They are, in fact, harming humanity. I hope somebody grabs this, edits it, gets that silly little clip out of the middle of it where I blacked out our broadcast for a few minutes, and we can put it up on any of the platforms, put it up on all the platforms, and share it as widely as possible. People, this is a short one, half hour. Hopefully you get it. Hopefully you've shared it. Hopefully you can make sure that you get it in front of all of the right people. And as always, it is an honor to come to you. I look forward to coming back to you. And next time, I hope to have my healthy, fluffy Australian bird sitting next to me. Between now and then, thank you all. And have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.